doing this for the last 5 years, and essentially we are the short sale experts, or the team behind agents. When they're going out and meeting with sellers, they can confidently call themselves an expert because they have us behind them, making sure that everything is being taken care of. When we work with an agent, we do everything in regards to a short sale from start to finish. We will work with the homeowner collecting their documents. We audit their file and make sure we don't find any red flags that would cause a lender to say no. We package it all up, we submit it through the bank and push it through their system. We have quite a few contacts inside banks that we can utilize to make sure things keep going. And then once we do get approval, which our current approval rate is approximately about 93% that we're able to do. And once we do get those approvals, we coordinate with escrow, making sure they have everything they need in order to get it closed. And lately what we're seeing, especially B of A, even after you have that approval letter, they have an audit program that they will go through, and sometimes they will reverse their approval. Sometimes they don't tell you that until right before closing. So it's important that we stay in touch with them to make sure there's no surprise moments at the end that causes a problem. And just a last note, customer service and communication is our benchmark. We have an open door policy. We answer our phones. We give weekly updates so that everybody's on the page. We will also include buyer's agents and the sellers themselves and buyers themselves, if that's what you prefer. We'll keep them in the loop as far as what's happening with the file, because the key to a successful short sale is making sure all parties stay in and having communication so everybody knows how it's progressing helps to keep them in. Our goal today here is just to talk about a little bit about the different programs or changes, or some things that are remaining the same, and how they affect short sales.
How many agents do we have in the audience? Okay, because we have a lot of agents and some lenders and all. Our goal as a team is to be an assistant to you. Our communication to you and to your clients are of most importance. So we want to partner with you throughout the transaction. Some agents are reluctant to turn over their commission check to us because in essence we're in charge of making sure that you get paid. We're in charge of making sure that that file closes, it gets through the bank, and that you get your commission check. And I know how difficult that is to turn over that. That's your livelihood. And we take that very, very seriously. So our communication is very important, and we want to assist you on whatever step you need. If you have a homeowner who's kind of reluctant and you're not feeling like you've got all the answers for them, let's do a conference call. We get on the phone with your clients and we close that sale for you, or we close that listing for you, and we've done it many times, because when your homeowner calls us and you say, here's my team, they specialize in short sales, this is all they do. And we work with foreclosure postponement if we need it. We get last minute ditch. Don't come 2 days before, but we've had to do it, and we will. But our goal is to assist you in whatever stage of the process that you need. The file is yours. The decisions are yours. When we get to the negotiating stage and we get a counter offer from the lender, our first phone call is to you. Okay, here's what they're saying. Here's what they're going to allow, here's what they're not going to allow. And with that, I'm going to give you my best guess or my best advice as to where we think we can bring that offer in. Sometimes an offer will come in, and the banks, just so you know, they will always counter at market value. They have to, because they have to prove to their investor that they tried to get market value. Now, we don't have to give them market value, but they have to ask. So with the costs that are on the HUD, what I believe their net to be, I can usually pretty closely pinpoint where we can get that offer in at. So depending on what your goals are for your homeowner, for your buyer, you know, everybody involved, we will we'll talk about what options are available and what the best next step is for you. So, I wanted to talk about the Debt Relief Act, which has been extended. We can all read. Because I know for 1 year, and I think this is a great time for you guys to use this as a marketing tool. Your sellers have 12 months to get their home taken care of before this Debt Relief Act goes up again. Because I seriously doubt it's going to be extended again because, you know, a lot can happen in a year. But from a marketing perspective, you got a great opportunity. You've got 12 months to get them in, lock them down, and get them done. Because that threat of having a $100,000 1099 is overwhelming. I have agents who have said, and I have personal ones who, homeowners are like, I can't do anything until I know what's happening with this Debt Relief Act because it's a strategic tax planning situation for them. They have to know how much money it's going to cost them, which is always what you want to do when you bring in your client, is have them talk to a tax professional because we're not professional tax people and we can't give them tax advice, but you don't ever want them to be caught off guard at the end of the transaction and say, I had no idea this was going to happen to me. Now I've got $30,000 that I can't pay for. So it's never good to find out that information at the back end. As well as when you're qualifying your homeowner, the modification step is always important because if they can get modified and they want to, they're going to do it. We've had transactions that are pulled like 5 days before closing. Guess what? I got a letter. My bank's going to modify me. And we're like, okay. They're not going to modify you. You have no income. You have no bank accounts. And they've lost their home because they pulled the transaction from the escrow, from the final stages, and they have gone to sale 5 days later. And we told them, but sometimes you have to refresh them. So when you tell them in your listing appointment, you will receive solicitations for modifications. It's going to happen. It's happening still today. So if you go through the process of scrubbing them, basically, is having them go through David, getting their numbers, and then they can make an informed decision. Because if they make that decision when you've already gotten their approval, your buyer's unhappy, we spent a lot of time working for nothing, and you're unhappy because you don't have a commission check. So, yes.
Yeah, but I understand that if you put the house on the market, then that means they no longer can go through the loan application.
That is untrue because your seller is in charge. That is their home. And guess what? They get to pick the offer too. So I had agents that go, would you send every offer to the bank? And the answer is no. Your seller is a principal in the transaction. The bank does not get to pick which offer goes to the bank. When the bank says, I want your highest and best, if your seller has picked an offer, that's the one that's going in. And that's a good part of articulating to your sellers is when I have a client ask me, is foreclosure better than short sale? And I said, do you want to be in control of your property or do you want somebody to take it away from you? Sellers, when they're in a situation like this, there's a lot going on in their life. They feel like everything's out of control. So if you can articulate to them, let's keep you in control of your property as long as possible, then it gives them something to hang on to. Nobody's going to come knocking on the door and say, you know what, you got 3 days to move. Through that process, we can kind of help them if they need a little extra time to stay in the house. We have ways that we can string out the foreclosure, or the short sale, or if they need to be out in 90 days, we can get them out in 90 days. So what happens is they get their dignity back. They're in control of their property. They get to pick the offer. If they want to sell it to a first-time home buyer, they can. If they want to sell it to an investor, they can. But they get to choose the offer. And so it's important to help them feel like they've gotten something back from their home, because it is. It's a huge loss for them. So on the other side of that, I don't know if many of you are marketing to people who are financially, it's a financial decision for them to leave their home. They typically can make that payment, but it just does not make sense to stay in that home for a long period of time because they're so far upside down. That's what we typically call a strategic short sale. We've been very successful at getting homeowners out of their home without missing a payment, and they're able to purchase a home the next day via FHA, and John will talk to you about that. It's a much more difficult process because we have to audit the file. It has to be pristine when it goes into the bank. We have to have every box checked, every bank statement audited, their financial ledger has to be done. but it can be done. We've been successful with quite a few homeowners, and it's really a benefit to them to be able to do it. Sometimes they're relocating, sometimes, you know, they're downsizing. And a bank can't say, I'm sorry, you have to live in your house forever because we're in an economic downturn. If they need to downsize, they need to downsize. So in today's market with the interest rates, people are going to they're going to move up and down and across the street if they want to. So again, they're in charge of their home. They get to make those decisions. So it is going to become a little more difficult because the banks are getting a little bit more tight on some of their qualifications for that. But if you have a homeowners in that situation, it hurts them not to go through this process because they are never going to miss a payment. What will hurt your homeowner the most is late payments on their credit report, not the short sale, not the foreclosure and the short sale headings on there, but is the missed payments. And so it's an option for you to be able to present to your sellers to say, hey, you know what, if you're in this situation, you hear it all the time, oh my gosh, my mortgage payments are so high, or I'm $300,000 upside down, or whatever their scenario is, give them that option. We can talk to them, we can go through the process with them, and it's, like I said, it's not going to be any harm to them in the long run because they're not missing anything. Okay? Incentive programs, there still are incentive programs from Wells, Chase, B of A, GMAC, Chase, thank you. And then there's actually a couple more that have incentive programs. Fannie and Freddie have discontinued the HAPA program, so a lot of the mortgages that we have are Fannie and Freddie, and they are not doing the HAPA program anymore. So just let your sellers know that if they have a Freddie or Fannie, we can check that for you, that they won't be eligible for HAPA.
That being said, though, if they're not eligible for HAPA, their servicer or lender may also have a separate program that they could qualify for.
What about the FHA?
Oh, FHA, yes. FHA, it's easier to get into an FHA loan than it is to get out of an FHA loan. It is extremely difficult, and the process, I would say, is almost twice the amount of time to get out. Would you say so, Nicole? It could be instead of 60 days, it could be 90 to 120, because I know with Bank of America, their FHA team, probably 5 people that are in their FHA department. Their FHA will make you go through a modification. They'll audit you to make sure that you cannot qualify. So to do a strategic on an FHA is probably not possible, just depending on what your client's situation is. And so they make them go through all these additional stages because it's a government-backed program, and they want to make sure that they truly cannot make those payments. So was it, which one did we have that was, they were about to sell on?
That was a CalHouse.
Oh, it was a CalHouse. Yeah. So some of the government programs have, or state programs have a little bit more stringent guidelines on them. So.
Although I will say we managed to get it through CalHouse regardless of what they said.
They originally told it, an agent brought us this loan that had a CalHouse and they couldn't get it through. And they said that the seller didn't have a financial hardship. Well, he remarried and needed to move where his stepchildren could go to school. They couldn't relocate.
Part of the divorce.
So he had to move in with them, and he still had his home. And they said, well, you don't have to live there. It's like, well, hello, I just got married.
But the other requirement was he was not allowed to rent
Not
it.
allowed to rent it.
So he couldn't sell it, he couldn't rent it, and he couldn't live in it. So
Yeah, so it's like, okay, well, what part of hardship is that? So the agent said, here, take it, I can't do it. So we were able to get it through the program for him, and he was able to close out on it, so it was a...
Have you done any reverse mortgages?
We have done reverse mortgages, yeah, and they've been successful too.
What about the
Investors? We do a lot of investors that we work with because we tend to hang around a lot of investors, and so they have a lot of rental properties that they don't want anymore. And we just did 2 for one homeowner last month. We got it through in like 60 days. 2 investment properties. The seller saved about $250,000 on those 2 properties, and we closed it before December 31st. So it was hairy, but we got it done. And that's where I had mentioned that whatever the situation is, we need to look at the financials. because we can't make a blanket decision on your seller until we actually see the hard facts of what's going on with them and what kind of hardship they're presenting to the bank. So,
What are their incentive programs or the lenders offering? Cash for keys or?
they don't do cash for keys because that happens to be on a foreclosure or whatever. And but they do, like Bank of America has a co-op program that they're doing. Chase has incentive programs, and what we do strategically as a company is when the HUD goes through, it goes through with an incentive. We're presuming the incentive, and we want them to take it off. We're not going to just say, oh, does my homeowner qualify? It's like, in our eyes, they qualify. I give them $20,000 as an incentive, or $30,000, and it's the bank's job and my job to make sure that that incentive stays on the HUD for them. So there is also a new program that you guys should be aware of. Bank of America's co-op program has a auction.com. So I have a client who is going to get $30,000 to sell their house, and the bank calls my seller and says, if you put this on auction.com, we'll give you $45,000 as an incentive. Have you guys heard of that at all? Okay.
Yeah.
My seller said, no, thank you, and the reason is because they probably can sell that house in the next 30 days. She needs until June, till her kids graduate, and so our goal is to keep her in her home through the short sale program until June so she can relocate. So to her, the additional $15,000 was not worth having to move out of her house in the next 30 to 45 days. So it is something now. The auction.com people contacted my seller directly. So it's important that we know what's going on so that you can head it out the path and you tell your seller, here's what you're going to get a phone call and here's what it's all about. So that they hear it from you and it's confirmed with the phone call that they're receiving, then you have validation and they can make an informed decision.
And one other really quick point, incentive programs, it's important that we sometimes, or usually try to get an incentive program, get a homeowner in an incentive program before the bank receives an offer. For some lenders, if an offer is submitted, an incentive no longer applies. So,
Which can mean the difference of 30 grand per year.
So we are talking about our partnership. We have a client who wants to reduce the mortgage because it's under what we're doing.
Okay, they have two options. They can try to do a settlement with their second, and that's for,
Oh,
okay,